it's still where I like to be. It's still it's still Paris or Rome to me, like they used to be thousands of years ago, and I want to be here. I want to be able to be here and be in England and France or travel wherever I want. I don't expect to be hassled unless I'm going to Hungary or something, or Czechoslovakia. Then I'd expect it.
That was John Lennon in 1975 outside the courthouse in New York City where he was fighting deportation. I learned something about John Lennon on this program last night.
The Supreme Court has recognized deferred action many times, as recently the authority of the government exercised discretion as recently as 2012, and regulations have recognized this since 1978, when for the first time the first known beneficiary of deferred action was John Lennon.
John Lennon. People say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. The dreamer who wrote those lyrics was, of course, John Lennon, who actually was America's first immigration dreamer. Because the legal precedent established in John Lennon's immigration case 42 years ago is the first legal building block that gave President Obama the authority, through executive action, to, in effect, grant new status to the Dreamers in June of 2012.
Effective immediately, the Department of Homeland Security is taking steps to lift the shadow of deportation from these young people. Over the next few months, eligible individuals who do not present a risk to national security or public safety will be able to request temporary relief from deportation proceedings and apply for work authorization.
The door that was opened by John Lennon's immigration court battle has now deferred deportation of more than 580,000 immigrants who entered the country illegally when they were children. President Obama is now planning to allow millions more people to pass through that door. Here is how John Lennon opened that door. President Richard Nixon, the only president in history forced to resign the presidency because of his own criminal conduct, was not a Beatles fan. Here he is in the Oval Office with Elvis Presley in 1970, who by that time could not have been more uncool. Elvis's rock and roll had quickly become old-fashioned once the Beatles made it to the United States. John Lennon had picked up a conviction for possession of cannabis resin in London in 1968, which is all the Nixon White House needed to deport him during Richard Nixon's re-election campaign, when John Lennon was planning a concert tour and voter registration drive, a drive that would help drive Richard Nixon out of office in favor of the most liberal anti-war candidate ever nominated by a major party, Democrat George McGovern. John Lennon hired a New York City immigration lawyer to fight his deportation. Lawyer Leon Wiles was 39 years old, but couldn't have been listening to the radio very much in those days because he had to actually ask a colleague, who is John Lennon? Leon Wiles tried many approaches to win legal status for John Lennon, including challenging the law that said convictions for possession of narcotic drugs or marijuana was grounds for deportation. Leon Wiles presented expert testimony that cannabis resin, also known as hashish, was not marijuana and thereby not covered by the law. And he actually asked John Lennon if hashish was marijuana, to which John Lennon replied, "Oh no, much better than marijuana." But most importantly, through the Freedom of Information Act, Leon Wiles discovered that the Immigration and Nationalization Service, using prosecutorial discretion in deciding who to deport. Leon Wiles discovered 1,843 cases of such prosecutorial discretion, which was part of a secret program then. And after he made that secret program public, the agency was then forced to issue public guidelines for the use of that kind of prosecutorial discretion, thus enshrining in law for the first time that prosecutorial discretion that President Obama has used to help Dreamers and expected to use to help millions more immigrants remain in this country. The 1986 immigration reform law further clarified prosecutorial discretion to include deferred action on some immigrants who could then be allowed to legally work while their immigration cases were pending. That is the basic legal authority that President Obama is expected to use when he takes action on immigration. It is an authority he might not have if John Lennon didn't bring in Leon Wiles to fight Richard Nixon's Immigration and Naturalization Service. It is my honor now to be joined by John Lennon's immigration attorney, Leon Wiles, and his son, immigration attorney, Michael Wiles. Pleasure. Leon, first of all, thank you very, very much for being here. This really is an honor. I remember as a kid watching you on television, coming out of the courthouse with John Lennon. In fact, I think we have a little more video of that we can show right now. Let's take a look at that.
Your defense must be costing you a lot of money.
Yeah,
Is it worth it?
it will be. I don't care about the money. I want to be here, you know. If I cared about money, I'd be living in Switzerland. I wouldn't be living in England or America. Both the taxes are high. I mean, it's only that much difference between the English and American tax. And if I cared about money only, I'd be in Switzerland. Wouldn't I, folks? In fact, that's a good idea, isn't it?
Leon, I know you went after this case in the representation of an individual client, but did you realize at the time that when you found this prosecutorial discretion, that you could be opening a door for more people than just John Lennon?
Yes, I did. Actually, John asked me, when I had explained to him that this has great potential for other people, he asked me whether I would continue studying it and publish some articles on it so that other lawyers might be able to use it in the future. It was very important to him.
Tell us what it was like just to work with John Lennon the person in this situation.
He was a very sweet, kind person. He was concerned about everybody around him. My children were, he would find out, how are they doing? How is my wife? We met in an elevator once going in the immigration building, and he was so kind. He would call to express his best on all the Jewish holidays because he knew that I didn't answer the phone on Friday night and Saturday. And he was so thoughtful and concerned about my well-being. He was a very, very special guy.
And the case dragged on for years, didn't it?
Yes. Actually, we dragged it on for years until we were able to get to a point where we could sue the government under the Freedom of Information Act for all this important information. And we needed to prolong his stay in the United States because the government, Mr. Nixon's administration, charged him with being an overstay by making up the rules as they went along. He was perfectly in legal status. They had just given him 2 weeks to leave, and they cut off his time within the 2 weeks and charged him with being an overstay for about a half a week.
Yeah.
It was an outrageous violation of his constitutional rights. And he reacted very well to it. He seemed to accept what the government was doing as what governments do. You saw the approach that he had. Mm-hmm. He only wanted to be able to live here peacefully and travel.
And Michael, one of the extraordinary things about it that we all saw when we were watching you and John Lennon on the courthouse steps in these cases was this was someone who loved America, loved New York City specifically, really could live anywhere in the world, really wanted to live here.
John had developed an extraordinary love for this nation, and I have to say, through my dad's scholarship in this case, he taught for 33 years in Cardozo Law School, mm-hmm. an immigration law class, and I have the privilege of having met my wife in his class, and I'm teaching the class now. But it was an endearing relationship, the Ballad of John and Leon.
Do you teach the Lennon case?
I do. In fact,
you do,
my
right?
dad comes each year. I got into this business just to carry his briefcase.
Right, yeah.
And he comes each year and he teaches that class, which is in a few weeks' time. And it's an endearing case that was a snapshot of America gone bad, and a dreamer and a scholar getting together and not knowing the effect that this would have on our nation a generation later.
Now, Leon, this was a president with an enemies list. This was as nasty a president as we have had in modern times, as we know. You were going into direct battle with Richard Nixon when you took on this case. J. Edgar Hoover, these were people who were willing to be vengeful about lawyers like you in cases like this. Did any of that enter your mind, and were you concerned about any of that going into this?
Oh, yes, we were concerned because our phones were being tapped. John was being followed. Two guys standing across the street, continuously fixing a bike, would be in a car following him if he left his apartment at any time. And it was a terrible pressure in the handling of the case. And I have to say that John's attitude was helpful even to me. He had a philosophy that the government does these things and we will still succeed.
What is it like for you, having, as I say, represented this one client in a case that you knew could have implications for many, many more, to be sitting here tonight with President Obama in office, considering taking executive action, using as the primary building block of his justification for this, the building block that you laid in the Lennon case, that you could be responsible now for the entry of the legal unification of millions of families in this country?
Well, I'll give John Lennon credit for it. I think he's entitled to that recognition. I'm a specialist that he hired to do the technical work. But his love of America and his willingness to dedicate himself to this case is something we should never forget.
Lawrence, my father's doing this for the last 58 years on the same office that John used to call on my dad. Anecdotally,
where the hold music really is.
Imagine.
Imagine.
And anecdotally, you should know that I broke away this evening from dinner with Elvis Presley's granddaughter.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Because she's dating a gentleman we helped get an O visa.
Okay, this is way too small a world.
Yeah, but immigration has permeated just about every society, from the pickers of blueberries in Georgia to the corridors and the borders that we have. We need strong border protection, but we also have to be judicious and put our resources where they're deserved. If the president is going to focus on pushing murderers and rapists out of this country, we're all for it. But we want to unify families, and we really want the economy to be repaired by workers and that greatest entrepreneurial spirit that we have now, immigrants.
Wiles, father and son, thank you very much for joining me tonight. And Leon Wiles, I cannot praise you enough. Heroic trial lawyers have done things as important as legislators, as we all know, in changing the way we live in this country. Can't thank you enough. A real honor to have you here.
My privilege.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Coming up.